Why is that? Why am I holding a statue of Kali Ma? Now, that's really to illustrate and to underpin what this video is about. The idea that we should not have a dark side to us, and somehow we have to fight the darkness within us. And this is one of the great disadvantages that Christianity has foisted upon Western people. It is also why Western people who are Christians have been the most appalling human rights violators the world has ever known. All the witch hunts, all the genocides, all the pogroms, all the colonialization, all going around the world converting and killing people. This happened because Christians have this belief of love thy enemy, love everyone, but it doesn't work in reality. And what happens at the macro level is the Christian is cannot make that work in its daily life. The Christian will meet assholes, the Christian will meet people who betrayed him, the Christian will be let down. So the Christian cannot validate that in his daily life. So what they do is they project their hatreds and their murderous intent into things like politics, colonialism, genocide, racism, and so on. And that's why Christians are so dangerous. Christians are incredibly dangerous on this earth. Now, I don't mean the average Christian person is like this. I'm saying Christianity as a mind virus, as a whole, as a mutation of Judaism is the problem, not Judaism, the mutation that is. There's three mutations from Judaism. When I talk about mutations, I'm talking about beginning with a new prophet. Christianity, Jesus Christ, Islam, Muhammad, and Mormonism, Brigham Young. They're the only three of all the others are basically offshoots of those three religions, those three off mutations of Judaism, and all the others are either Judaism in some other form. So they're the only three that you can actually say are mutations. Again, I'm not putting down Islamic people, I'm not putting down Mormon people, I'm not putting down Christian people as individuals. I'm talking about the cultural and social effects of that type of religion. They all talk about peace, but they all seem to descend into quite the opposite. Mormonism is in its early days, so let's not give them such a bad time because they haven't really done anything yet. But we do know there was massacres of Native Americans committed by, I think it was Mormons, and they also massacred other people as well. In the early days, again, it was like love thy neighbor, you know, Jesus is love, we are love, and it doesn't work on the micro level, just like it didn't work in Salem. So then it's projected to the macro level, and then it's kind of absolved on the personal level. So like the Christian validates it by saying, I'm a good man in my daily life, but I'm exercising the shadow when I join a colonial army. You see, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting. Now, this brings us to Kali, and also the basic thing of this thing. I bought this statue in Sri Lanka, and it was smashed to bits in my suitcase. Thank you, Dubai Airport. And I took it home and I rebuilt it. It's made from plaster, and I'm repainting it, so it's like half repainted. It was badly repainted, so I'm going to give it a professional paint job. Now, Kali Ma is a great example of what I'm talking about. In her aspect, she's the loving, caring mother, but she's also the mother who will kill to protect those she loves. So that's when she transforms into that, you know, that bloated monster with the tongue out. That's her when she's in her aspect as the defender. She also destroys you. You must. I'm not saying you should become Hindus. I'm just giving you this as an example. The other things, the Morrigan exists in the pagan pantheon and so on. But there's all kinds of versions around the world. But she will tear you to bits. Now, this is important because if she doesn't tear you to bits, you will tear someone else to bits, because you're not exercising your shadow. She allows the shadow to be unleashed. She's also associated with time, so she's this idea that she's a measurement of consciousness and past life and future lives and present life type ideas. In Christianity, because We don't have that. We have the Virgin Mary in Catholicism. Now, Catholicism is the least of dangerous of all the Christian religions, mainly because it's basically paganism. And so that does exercise the shadow, but not enough. That's why you have perverted priests and stuff like that. But we have the Virgin Mary, she's all loving. We don't have a dark one. And this is why, sort of, which I should say, more advanced, and I'll give them that word, they'll use that term, Catholic sects, like Santeria, I've given a Santa Muerte, and these ideas of the dark saint, the dark mother, very important, very important. And you also have the Black Madonna in the Mediterranean countries. Now, this brings us to the topic of love and light. How love and light destroys you. Now, these people who say, I'm all love and light, that's a completely unnatural way to be. Because you will get pissed off by people in traffic. You will get pissed off by people on the subway commuting in the morning. You will get pissed off by people you love. Very important. And if to have this idea like, oh, I must fight my ego. I must fight my ego, so I love everyone. You will end up destroyed. Kali will destroy you. She will tear you asunder in whatever archetypal form you choose, but it will happen. And this is where all this suffering in Western society, a lot of it comes from, this idea of love thy neighbour, be everyone's friend, forgive and forget. It doesn't work like that. This is not how it is. Time, Kali also represents time, and that time heals all. So if you suppress, if you suppress your anger, you never let it burn out and dissolve and become meaningful over time, Kali. What happens is you hold it like a boiling lava of resentment inside you until the day comes where someone or something, often yourself, will explode it out, and it will be volcanic, and it will probably destroy your life. And that's why you cannot have this love and light thing. I love everyone, everything is wonderful. Life is difficult, life is challenging, life is always beautiful as well. People are assholes. Like, as much as they're nice, you're an asshole as much as you're nice, and that's okay. You're complex, you're many shades of grey. Reality is many shades of grey. Now, in the terms of how these people go, love and light, I must kill my ego. Well, that's psychic self-murder. The most dangerous idea that's ever been foisted upon humanity in terms of a spiritual idea is the New Age idea, which is a corruption of the Buddhist idea, which is nothing like it, of you must kill your ego. That's also apparent in Vedic Hinduism as well. But then when they say, they're not saying you kill your ego. What they're saying is that you learn to tame your ego. But that does not mean taming it like you whip a dog or you tame a lion. Not at all. What you do is you understand your ego. So therefore, if your ego is causing you problems, instead of going, I'm going to shut that down, I got to kill it. What you do is, why is this happening? How can I learn from it? Is there positive attributes as well as negative attributes? This is very, very important stuff. This is very big stuff, because the New Age movement has taken the idea of taming, or it really shouldn't be called taming your ego. It should be called working with your ego, because you have a relationship with your ego that's vital to your survival as a human being upon this earth. Therefore, you work with your ego, and if your ego causes you to get angry, get angry. If your ego causes you to get, full of yourself, be full of yourself. If it blows up in your face, then you say, that was not the right place, I should have done this. Like, there's a great scene in that Wayne's World movie where I think Mike Myers says something to a girl trying to impress her, and then he goes, I wish I didn't say that. That's a classic example of taming your ego. You can't take back what happened, but what you can do is you can learn from what happened. You can learn from it. So important. And this idea of like, I must kill my ego, well, you're never learning. You're never ever having a learning process. All you're doing is suppressing. It becomes almost like your own personal family secret that no one talks about. When a family has a dark secret, the secret never ever remains a secret. It explodes to the surface in not this generation, the next generation. It goes on and on and on. A lot of these social justice warriors come from wealthy families who had ancestors who were slave owners, who were ancestors who had, you know, were involved in colonialism. You know, they were like down, you know, they were in the British Empire and other empires, and they become, or in America, their family members were, you know, they had cotton plantations and tobacco plantations and slaves on them. They are not able to accept the legacy of their families. So they then projected upon working class people in America and Europe who had nothing, and tried to project, you see that in Britain a lot, these wealthy aristocrats whose family members all gained from the most murderous colonialism. They're not projecting upon Grandpapa Quinton, who was in the colonies, this kind of, they're projecting about some poor bastard who's in Rotherham or in Liverpool or in Manchester, Glasgow, who had nothing to, as ancestors were was probably worse off than many of the people in the colonies that were oppressed. Until that's resolved, those families will always have mental issues, until eventually down the line, I think in another 2 generations, you might have aristocratic descendants standing up and saying, it was our family who did it. And then you will have a healing. Right now they're in a situation where they're suppressing it and they're not learning from it. And it's an ego thing as well, because their own personal ego refuses to want them to believe that there's some darkness within themselves. Again, Christianity does this also, because in sort of a polytheistic transmigration of souls, reincarnation idea, you have these ideas of the honor of the family as well as the honor of the individual. So if the family has a bad name, you must absolve that in the future, and that's okay. You do it your own way. Now, so that's why the love and light thing is awful, just awful. And this is why the idea of suppressing your ego is much, much more dangerous than people realize. What's the intermediate? Well, I think magic is a good one, because I know I keep bringing this up, because magic, although it indulges the spiritual, it also allows you to fight in a kind of a psychic way. That's quite very healthy when you need to fight, although you should never curse people. It's anyone who starts cursing people, it's a sign of powerlessness, and it always comes back. And again, if you curse somebody, it goes on to the children, and that's deeply unethical. The best thing is to learn how to deflect, against attacks and psychic curses and psychic attacks, because that's a much better way. You're just sending it back, rather than doing something that may have unethical results later on down the line, and you may have to live with guilt or something like that. And that's another thing you have to do. You have to learn how to get rid of your guilt. Now, guilt is another Christian thing based on the idea of absolving your sins. Guilt is not the same thing as remorse. Remorse is much more healthier. Remorse is real. Guilt is just carrying inside you going, I shouldn't have done this, blah, blah, blah. Where remorse is like, I shouldn't have done this, but I've got to make amends for what I did. And therefore, it's not punishment necessarily. It's making amends for what you did in a healthy way that will help someone else. And that's how you do it. And that's the way you live. You don't suppress your ego. See, it's again, I know I sound boring when I say this, that Christianity was a catastrophe for the West, but it really, really was, and it continues to be. And a lot of our social issues in our societies are born out of this idea that our politicians are acting like good Christians, even though they're not. But they're giving this kind of, we must help this, we must solve these problems, deal with this stuff, etc. And no, it's not like that. You've got to confront the shadow in yourself, the shadow in society, and the shadow in the people around you. And then when you confront that, you must deal with it. You deal with it either by fighting back, walking away, a no contact ever again thing, or most important of all, and extremely egotistical, is to say, what is it about me that brought this shit into my life? And if that's not an example of using the ego in a positive and a beautiful way, then I don't know what is. Tame your ego, work with your ego, and whatever you do, do not suppress your shadow. And you will be happier, better, safer, and you'll attract better people into your lives. That's what, allow Kali, every so often, allow Kali to tear you asunder so you can be reborn again. Thank you. Take care.